Federal cannabis reform faces another delay, as a DEA administrative law judge cancels the January 21st hearing on rescheduling cannabis. The decision allows for legal appeals amid allegations of procedural misconduct, pushing back the process by at least 3 months.
This is the State of Cannabis News Digest, a roundup of this week's key developments in the cannabis industry. Our top stories.
Indiana lawmakers are considering two marijuana-related bills, proposing the legalization of recreational cannabis and setting a THC limit for drivers. Despite public support and potential financial benefits from cannabis legalization, Iowa remains firmly opposed to recreational cannabis. New York's Supreme Court ruled that warrantless raids on licensed hemp retailers violated constitutional rights.
And now, here is the deeper look at the key events in the cannabis world this week.
Iowa remains firmly opposed to legalizing recreational cannabis, even as the state faces a significant $1 billion revenue shortfall over the next 2 fiscal years. This financial gap, driven by tax cuts and increased spending on programs such as private school vouchers, has intensified discussions around alternative revenue sources. While state leaders have resisted raising taxes, some critics argue that cannabis legalization could emerge as a viable sin tax option, especially as neighboring states reap substantial financial rewards from legalized markets. The potential financial benefits of cannabis legalization in Iowa are noteworthy. Nearby states like Missouri and Illinois have reported millions in tax revenue from cannabis sales, with Missouri generating over $65 million in its first year, and Illinois benefiting from cross-border sales to residents of prohibition states. If Iowa were to legalize recreational cannabis, it could tap into this market, reducing the flow of revenue to neighboring states and boosting its own economy. However, opposition to legalization remains strong, often rooted in concerns about public health and social impacts, including potential risks to brain health. On the other hand, medical cannabis is less contentious and has bipartisan support, with recognition of its benefits for patients managing conditions like epilepsy and PTSD. Interestingly, this resistance to legalization contrasts with public opinion, as polls suggest that roughly 60% of Iowans support recreational cannabis, while proposals for legalization have included measures such as expunging criminal records and establishing regulatory frameworks. They have consistently stalled in the legislature. Still, with mounting financial pressures, some speculate that attitudes may shift over time, as states facing similar challenges increasingly turn to cannabis markets as a source of much-needed revenue.
In a major decision in New York this week, the state's Supreme Court has ruled that warrantless raids on licensed hemp retailers violated constitutional rights. The ruling on January 13th halts such raids, declaring that armed enforcement actions by the New York City Sheriff's Office and state regulators lacked proper legal authority and violated the Fourth Amendment. The case was brought by 5 New York hemp retailers who described years of heavy-handed raids involving intimidation, unlawful product seizures, and financial harm. The final ruling criticized the blurred lines between licensed hemp businesses and unlicensed cannabis operations, calling for clear distinctions and lawful enforcement. The ruling limits future inspections to 2 unarmed regulators unless credible safety concerns arise, offering much-needed relief to licensed operators struggling under strict regulations and competition from the illicit market. While this decision is a victory for business owners, it also highlights ongoing challenges in balancing public safety with protecting lawful industries, a debate many states face as they navigate the complexities of cannabis regulation.
Indiana is at a pivotal moment in its cannabis policy this week, debating 2 significant bills that could redefine marijuana laws in the state. First, the proposed House Bill 1630 seeks to legalize recreational marijuana for adults 21 and older. With 70% of Iowans reportedly supporting legalization, the measure reflects growing public favor. However, its future faces uncertainty, especially in Indiana's Republican-led Senate, where resistance remains strong. Meanwhile, House Bill 1119 would establish a legal THC impairment limit for drivers, using the Draeger drug test 5000 to enforce a 5 nanogram threshold in saliva. If passed, these measures could reshape Indiana's economy, legal system, and public health landscape. Legalization under House Bill 1630 might curtail black market activity, generate tax revenue, and expand access to cannabis for residents, particularly veterans and medical patients who see it as a safer alternative to opioids. However, stricter driving laws under House Bill 1119 could create new compliance challenges. We will be monitoring the development of this story.
After narrowly losing in 2024, Florida's Smart and Safe Florida Group is back with a revised plan to legalize recreational marijuana for the 2026 ballot. The updated proposal aims to address public safety and regulatory concerns raised by Governor Ron DeSantis, who opposed the earlier initiative. Key changes include a ban on public smoking and vaping to reduce secondhand exposure, new licenses to promote a wholesale marijuana market, possession limits of up to 2 ounces for adults, regulation of home cultivation by the legislature, and strict rules against child-friendly packaging. Advocates believe these adjustments will ease opposition, attract more voters, and benefit patients, recreational users, and the industry by fostering competition, variety, and potentially lower prices. Despite optimism, they recognize challenges, particularly in a midterm election with typically lower turnout. The proposal reflects lessons learned and a stronger focus on regulation and safety, positioning it for a potential win in 2026.
After a heated 3-hour hearing on January 15th, the Idaho House Judiciary Rules and Administration Committee voted 10-4 to advance HB 7 to the full House for consideration. The bill introduces a mandatory minimum fine of $300 for misdemeanor marijuana possession involving less than 3 ounces. Proponents argue the measure will deter drug use and create consistent penalties, while critics warn it could disproportionately impact low-income individuals and reduce judicial flexibility. The debate featured emotional testimony from veterans and individuals with chronic illnesses advocating for medical cannabis, alongside law enforcement officials highlighting its potential deterrent effects. If enacted, the bill could significantly influence Idaho's ongoing legal and medical cannabis debates. Opponents note that other misdemeanor crimes, including some violent offenses, lack similar mandatory minimum fines, sparking concerns about fairness. Advocacy groups and medical cannabis patients warn that the bill could discourage individuals who might benefit from cannabis for pain management due to fear of prosecution. From an industry perspective, the bill underscores Idaho's strict anti-cannabis stance, potentially deterring cannabis-related business opportunities. This could leave the state further isolated from neighboring regions, with more permissive cannabis laws, limiting both economic growth and access to medicinal cannabis for residents.
In Colorado Springs, a debate is brewing over the implementation of recreational marijuana sales, after voters approved ballot question 300 in November of last year. The measure allows medical dispensaries to apply for recreational licenses with a 1,000-foot buffer from sensitive areas like schools. However, a city council ordinance requiring a stricter 1-mile buffer has sparked controversy, effectively preventing most dispensaries from operating. Supporters argue the council's actions undermine voter intent, while critics stress the need to preserve the city's family-friendly image. Advocates, including veterans who rely on THC for medical conditions, point to the potential economic and medical benefits of accessible cannabis. The council is now reconsidering the buffer and may even put the issue back on the ballot this April. The decision could have significant implications for the local economy and public trust in city leadership.
On January 13, 2025, a significant twist unfolded in the journey toward federal cannabis reform. DEA Chief Administrative Law Judge John Mulrooney canceled a much-anticipated hearing on the proposed rescheduling of cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 under the Controlled Substances Act. Originally scheduled for January 21st, the hearing was postponed by at least 3 months, with updates now required every 90 days. This delay follows a motion for appeal filed by proponents of rescheduling, who raised concerns about procedural bias and alleged improper conduct by the agency itself. This development lands at a pivotal moment as President-elect Donald Trump prepares to assume office. His administration could reshape leadership within the DEA and significantly influence the rescheduling process, leaving stakeholders in a state of uncertainty. For advocates of cannabis reform, rescheduling to Schedule 3 is seen as a critical move. Such a change would lift substantial burdens on the industry, including relief from the onerous tax provisions of Section 280E of the Internal Revenue Code, which currently prevent cannabis businesses from deducting standard business expenses. It would also pave the way for expanded research opportunities, easing restrictions that have long hindered scientific studies on cannabis. But the delay underscores deeper issues within the federal system. Allegations of misconduct, such as undisclosed communications with prohibitionist groups and mishandling of evidence, have shaken confidence in the fairness of the process. This uncertainty places additional strain on an industry already grappling with complex and inconsistent regulations across states. As the Trump administration steps into the fold, all eyes turn to the potential appointment of a new DEA administrator. Their approach could either expedite or further complicate the rescheduling effort, adding another layer of unpredictability to an already fraught process. In the meantime, cannabis businesses and investors are left in limbo. Many are doubling down on operational efficiency and focusing on navigating state-specific regulations while waiting for clarity from the federal government. The question now is whether the promise of reform will overcome the roadblocks of bureaucracy, bias, and political shifts, or if it will remain just out of reach.
This was the State of Cannabis News Digest, available weekly. You can listen to us on all main podcast platforms. To make sure you don't miss out on the latest updates and in-depth analysis of the cannabis industry, be sure to subscribe to our podcast. By subscribing, you'll get notifications for each new episode, helping you stay informed and ahead in the ever-evolving cannabis market. Join us next Saturday for more insights. Until then, keep thriving and stay green.